Sheila, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sure. Why not?
Will you give I think I know a general answer, but can you give a definition of globalism versus nationalism?
Oh yeah, sure, that's easy. Globalism is the belief that there should be a global community. A global nation is not even the right word, but for the purposes of understanding, that we should be one planet with one people and one government and one religion. Globalism is pretty much the one world government. That's just another way of saying one world government. Globalism is that philosophy, it's an ideology that believes that this way we'll have peace. Of course, we'll have peace under a dictatorship, but that's the ideology, that this way there will be world peace. If it's one government over the whole world, we'll have peace. You know? Except that that's just totally against human nature. You know? Sort of, that's where Rome was coming from. You know, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Rome ruled over, I believe, the whole civilized world in that day. Rome was as far as Egypt. I don't really know what the borders of Rome were, but they were in the Middle East, they were in Egypt, they were obviously all of Europe. The Roman Empire extended to the point that they called it the world, the civilized world, the Pax Romana, the world peace. So that's what globalism is. That's the theory, one government. But Rome was Republican, and then it became a dictatorship. As Caesar extended his conquests, Caesar became a megalomaniac and made himself into a dictator, and then they killed him. They assassinated him, and then, of course, everything deteriorated after that. But then there's nothing new under the sun. Man simply cannot do it without God. There is no way that there will be peace. There is no way that there will be world peace without God. There is no way that every human being will be cared for without God. It simply will not happen. It simply will not happen. See? So, just to finish my answer to Sandra's question, nationalism is when you have nations at national government and national sovereignty, leaders doing what's best for their nation, as opposed to one dictator or one oligarch meaning ruled by a few, like many call our Supreme Court an oligarch, because it was never intended that 9 men, which are now 8 men, should be making decisions that overthrow the will of the elected representatives of the people. So, and I understand that it was the Supreme Court themselves that passed some kind of a ruling that gave them that power. So everything's out of control. The power has been stolen out of the hands of men that will yield to God in this nation. Okay. So, but nationalism is the belief, nationalism is an ideology that says we have a geographical area that's inhabited by people, by like-minded people. At least, now we don't have to have the same religion and believe everything that we all believe. But when I say like-minded people, I mean the people that say, this is my country, and I'm for this country. And I want to vote for representatives that will be righteous, so that we can have a righteous government, and so that the people of the nation will be cared for, and that we can be a blessing to the people outside of ourselves. That's what nationalism, but actually that's not even nationalism. Nationalism is that you are loyal to your country as opposed to a global government. Actually, we can see that in America, where we don't really have, well, if you want to look at it in terms of the states, we don't really have that. We have all of the states in America yielding to the globalism of nationalism, if you can hear what I'm saying. All of the states gave up their rights. If they had won, if the South had won the war, we would have been 2 countries today. We would have been 2 nations, say. But one nation, the North, defeated another nation, the South, and we became one nation. And now we struggle within ourselves, just like you struggle within a family, but no one talks about overthrowing the federalism of the nation America, although they're talking about it today. Did you understand? Did I make that clear, Sandra? I'm just going on and on. Did you understand what I said?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So the problem is that the people don't understand it or believe it. I know I told my niece, she tells me she doesn't believe it, that almost the whole Democratic Party, and maybe at least half, if not more, of the Republican elected officials are not nationalists. They are not doing what's best for America. And they don't desire to do what's best for America. They're doing what's best for the globalist movement, which is trying to establish itself as a one-world dictatorship. But there are still areas that have not been ameliorated yet. Russia won't give in, and people in America don't want to give in, but these New World Order proponents, they operate out of the UN, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to set themselves up as a godless oligarchy that rules the world. I saw a picture online the other day of the 16, at least the article claimed, the 16 rulers, the 16 men comprising the oligarchy of the one world government, of the one world order. And I found it very interesting because they're all men. First of all, they're all men. And of course, Rockefeller was there and Soros was there. I never really thought of Soros in that. I've thought about Soros and I've said, what is it with this man that he wants to destroy our nation? And I understand that he has destroyed other nations. I believe he broke the power of the pound in Britain. The man's done a lot of damage. And I've had these thoughts, what is it with this man that he's so maniacal? And for some reason, the thought never occurred to me that he's involved with the headship of this group that called themselves the New World Order. But there he was, and now I understand what is behind Soros' maniacal obsession with destroying this nation. He wants to tear down our sovereignty so that we, just as the federal government tore down the sovereignty of the southern states, so that we would be one nation. He wants to tear down the sovereignty of America so that they can form their one world government and be the oligarchy, 16 men. But you better believe that they're not all equal, because 16 men, they're not going to have equal rule where they vote. You better believe that there's one man at the top. I don't know who it is, and maybe he wasn't even amongst those 16. But what I found very interesting, brethren, was number one, that they were all men, and number two, that they were all white. And I just found it very interesting as to what's going on in this world. And I've been listening to YouTube videos a lot. I find some very interesting material on there if you just want to educate yourself. And you need to listen to ideas that you don't necessarily agree with or that you might think is wrong. So I found this man, and I've learned a lot from him. And I clicked on one of his videos, and he was interviewing a man. He had been thrown out of the university because of what he was teaching. The man was an anthropologist, and he was teaching. Now don't go shutting off your connection here or getting mad at me until you hear the whole thing, okay? This man was teaching. He was relieved of his post in the university. I think it was in Canada. Because he was teaching that the northern countries, the countries up north, I'll just synopsize it for you. He was saying that the white people are superior to the darker colored people, to the darker skinned peoples. And that's what he was saying. And he was talking in terms of intelligence tests, like intelligence. He was saying all of the darker skinned people down south in the southern countries average like a 90 IQ, and when you go up north the IQ jumps to 130, and that there's a strong divide, and that's where he was going. And I'm listening to this and I'm saying, well, that's shocking to hear somebody saying that. And I said, I happen to know that well, first of all, how do you group a whole category of people that come from a particular, not only a country, but a particular region, and say that their IQ was only 90, and that the group on the other side, in the north, that they're the intelligent ones. How do you do that? People, individuals. But aside from that, I said, well, I personally know that that's not true, because I happen to know darker skinned people that are brighter than I am, or that probably have a higher IQ than I do, and I happen to know I've met a lot of darker skinned, I'm not going to say black, brown, yellow, darker skinned, non-white people that are doctors and lawyers and very, very brilliant. So how could somebody be saying that? So my first question was, why is this man that I'm learning so much from, why is he putting somebody like that up there on his show? See? And the gentleman that was being interviewed, that was put out of his office, he went to court and he won, that the university had no right to fire him. So they had to reinstate him, and then as soon as he turned 70, they forced him to retire. So I'm saying, why would he put somebody like that up on his show? And should I continue to listen to him, and what's going on here? Until I realized that this Australian interviewer, I'm sorry whose name I don't recall, except that it's a French name, he's just for free speech. It doesn't even mean that he agreed with that. He was making his stand for free speech, and everybody has to decide for themselves. So I'm listening to this man, and I'm saying, but I know that's not true. I know that's not true. I know some dark-skinned people that are very bright and talented, you know. And how could anybody group a whole category of people like that? So here I am thinking for myself, you see, that's not true. So the answer is not to block free speech. The answer is education. The answer is to educate the people, to know what is true, so that when they hear somebody teaching a false ideology, you can decide for yourself that it's not true, and that that's a very unfair and ridiculous thing to say. That even in this country, I've heard groups, the most identified groups in this nation today are black and white. I've heard black people interviewed saying, how can anybody say this is the black position? We are as diverse as anybody else. There are all kinds of dark-skinned people in this country. There are Republicans, there are Democrats, there are nationalists, there are communists. They have all different kinds of opinions within this country. And that's true of Jewish people, and that's true of white people. So how does anybody take a whole region, the whole south of the world, and say that their average IQ is 90, and the north of the world, the average IQ is 130? It's ridiculous, you know. And I don't even know if I would call the man a bigot. That's what is that a bigot, or he's an educated man? I don't know where he's drawing his data from, but he's okay. I don't have to be calling him a bigot. I really thank him for giving me the opportunity to exercise my mind and to exercise judging righteous judgment in this world. So is this political correctness that blocks free speech, it's very wrong. That is not how God works. God is into education, honest teaching, and discussion, and debate. See? And that's how we'll remain free. So, anyway, I don't really, everything that I listen to, I have to believe that God has pointed me in that direction. So I understand that this interviewer that put him up there, he's a libertarian and he believes in free speech. And the fact that he had that man up there does not mean that he believes any of that. So the next thing that I wound up listening to, and I really don't even know why, but I have to believe God was behind it, I wound up listening to Minister Farrakhan preach. And as you all, I hope you all know that I did a critique of Minister Farrakhan's interview by Alex Jones. And I felt that Farrakhan, he's a very sophisticated man, Farrakhan. Excellent speaker. I understand he's an accomplished musician and intellect. very, very accomplished man, and he knows the Bible as well as the Quran. Very talented individual and charismatic. So he was supposed to be up on Alex Jones' show with regard to the political situation in the world. But Minister Farrakhan, he took what's his first name? Somebody tell me what his first name is, please. Margaret, look, please, if you're still on there, please look up his first name for me. I know you usually do that. He
You're talking about Louis Farrakhan?
Louis, okay, thank you, Louis Farrakhan, yeah. He took that opportunity to be invited on Alex Jones' show for a political position. He took that opportunity to preach to the people, to the audience, because Alex Jones has 20 million people watching him. And the reason I wrote the article that I did was that I thought that Alex Jones, that it went right over his head, what he had done. Now, subsequent to that, I'd gotten an email from Sandra that she heard Alex Jones preach. I didn't know Alex Jones was a preacher. And I tried several times to find that link, and I couldn't seem to find Alex Jones preaching. I never did. I would like to hear him preach, Sandra, if you can find it for me again. I couldn't find it. But it wouldn't surprise me to find out that Alex Jones is a typical preacher in the church, and that Louis Farrakhan ran rings around a typical preacher in the church. That wouldn't surprise me, because the typical preachers in the church don't really go very deep. And so that was my complaint, not really so much about Farrakhan, is that he wasn't stopped. You see, I believe in free speech. I was just frustrated that Alex Jones didn't even know that Christianity was being criticized, and at least in one of the points that Louis Farrakhan made, if not more than one, he was right in criticizing the church. So I was just frustrated at the state of the church. You know, I'm nothing against Louis Farrakhan at all. But I wound up listening to Louis Farrakhan preach a full message yesterday, and it was very, very interesting. First of all, further to what's happening here today, everybody stood up when he walked up to the pulpit. This is a universal sign of respect for anyone that's coming to bless the people. You stand up because you're the ones that will be receiving from the one who's coming to teach you. It used to be that children stood up when their teacher came into the classroom. Brethren, it's good to live that way. It's a good thing to respect the society. You feel good about yourself. It's a good thing to do. So anyway, everybody stood up when he walked into the room. One thing I've noticed about, Louis Farrakhan, he has a movement called the Nation of Islam. I don't believe that they agree with the radical jihadists in the Middle East, and I think that if those jihadists were ever to attack here, they would probably try to slaughter the Nation of Islam, because they don't live according to the radical rules of the jihadists. But I've noticed that there's a lot of, I'm certainly not recommending the Muslim religion, but I've seen for a long time that it's good for the people. I've seen a lot of, brethren, there are problems in our black community. Let's not be politically correct. There are problems in the black community in this country, okay? Many have been liberated to a large degree since Martin Luther King. We now have I think, a sizable black middle. I think we have an impressive black middle class, but many never stood up. See? And it's a problem. It's a problem. See, all of the black leaders, most of the black leaders, are corrupt and using their own people. I see a lot of black people that go to church, and they'll tell you that they're saved, and they're living like the world lives. Then I look at Minister Farrakhan's group, and they're all walking around. Now, I'm not saying everybody's perfect. I'm looking at the exterior in general, okay? People aware of righteousness, aware of moral laws, we see both black and white in the church today. People, in fornication and promiscuous fornication, and they'll tell you right to your face they're saved. what an insult to God. So when I look at the Nation of Islam, I see people really, at least on the surface, living a righteous life. I see men being taught to be gentlemen. I see a lot of intelligent people there, and I'm impressed, because what I see there I don't see in the church, you know. So I'm listening to him, and I'm looking at the group that are listening to him, and all the men are dressed in suits. You go to church today, but they're in dungarees and with holes in them, okay? And that's black and white. You know. So he started preaching, and it was one good message. I'm listening to him for almost an hour, and I'm saying, wow, he's talking about the Bible. He's talking about the Quran. See, the reason he was really injecting things from the Bible, because he had people there that were Christians. You see, they showed you the audience. He had a whole slew of women dressed in white, with white. I guess that's, I don't know whether that's what the women dress like when they become members of the church, or whether these were special ministresses in the church. I don't know, but they were all in white with white headdresses that you would think that our nurses used to dress like that. But then there were women sitting there with nothing on their head, and I think he has, because there's more black Christians than there are black Muslims, I think. And does anyone know where he preaches out of? Do you know, anyone know where he preaches out of? If someone could find that out for me, I'd appreciate it. What city he's preaching out of? I don't know whether he's in New York or not. So he was preaching to the Christians that had come in to investigate his message. It was one good message. And I'm listening to it almost an hour already, and I'm saying, wow, you know, I don't know a church that could compare to this message. And he was preaching righteousness, and he was telling the people about their sins, and he was telling them, of course he was dealing with the surface sins, and he was telling them about their sins in a way that he put humor into it so they could tolerate it, and he was revealing envy in the women, you know, and jealousy and cattiness, and he was revealing, and then he was talking about the young men, because, you know, with regard to drugs, and how there's rebellion against parents, and how, I'm not going to repeat what he was saying, but it was brilliant. He was really helping the people, giving them examples, how they should listen to their mother, who's wanting them to stay away from that guy that's dealing drugs, and it was brilliant. And he could have been preaching in a church, see? And then he kept on going, and then he started talking about the genesis of man. And he made a really interesting point, brethren. And maybe some of you have heard this before, but I never really thought along these lines before. And the point that he made is that all of the evidence is that the original people on the earth were black. So where did white people come from? And he just went on and on with genetics. He was talking about recessive genes and dominant genes. He was saying that black is dominant and white is recessive. And I was really listening. I believe that I was listening without any prejudice, so it was very, very interesting. And I understood why there has been such, at least in the past, the walls are all down now. Most of the walls are down now. Such a resistance against intermarriage in this country, because intermarriage of black and white, if it goes far enough, will wipe out the white race, because white is a recessive gene. So eventually there would be no white people left at all. And I started asking, well, where did white people come from? Because Louis Farrakhan's opinion as to where white people came from his message turned very crazy, in my opinion. Brethren, I have heard, I am aware, not today so much anymore, but there are white preachers that have preached that black people come from apes and animals, and now I heard it from a black man about white people, that somehow God pulled the recessive gene out of man and mated them with dogs, and white people are the result of humans mating with dogs. And he took this tremendous positive message, and that was very uplifting for the people, giving them self-confidence and self-esteem. And he made some really good points, and then he turned it into that. And I said, well, I don't believe that, and I'm really sorry to hear that he went in that direction, but I acknowledge that there have been white people that have said that about black people, so who can complain? Except that it's a shame that white, black, green, orange, red, or yellow should say that about anyone else. So I said to the Lord, but there's truth in what he said, that black is dominant and white is recessive, and that if all the walls came down on mixed marriage, there would be no more white people left, and that I believe is true. So, what is the story, and where did white people come from, and how did we get into this position that we're in today? That the whole power structure seems to be white. Today in this country we have some black people that have gotten into the high echelons, but we all know what this country, that it's been all white, So, and that the whole Western world, with all of the improvements in the technology and everything that other nations are picking up on now, but it all started in the West. So, what does this mean, and what is it all about? And he was saying that it's not. We know that some people say, and I think I was believing it for a while. I'm very open. I just want the truth, brethren. I don't have any ego in what I believe. I have no ego. I just want the truth. That that Europe is Israel. That somehow Israel transferred to Europe, and I think that I was pretty much believing that as of recent date. And he was saying that it's not true at all. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not dogmatic about anything, but I would like to know what it means, that this New World Order, 16 men of the New World Order, that they're all males and they're all white. I would like to know what it means. So I only got as far as that it happened at the Tower of Babel, and there was a division at the Tower of Babel. We broke down into different languages, and also that was how the white race came out of that, But we all know that Abraham was brown. Abraham was not white. So I don't know. It was just very interesting. But I found it very interesting. I don't have any point. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where the Europeans came from. But it's really looking, brethren, like this whole new, I do know, it's just painful for me to say it. It's looking like this whole New World Order ideology that it seems to have been born from these Khazar Jews, which are not the biblical Jews. Khazar Jews. That's where it seems to go back to. That's where the ideology was born. Okay. So those are converted that nation of Khazaria, that converted to Judaism. And what I find on the internet is that there are many people saying that, even Jews saying that, 92% of the people who call themselves Jewish today are really converted Khazarians and not the descendants of Abraham. And that Khazaria was with the Huns, or were descendants of the Huns and Japheth, and that's where it seems to be coming from. So I continue to, and they're the ones that have this plan and this desire to rule the world. So I'm still investigating, and I found a very interesting, well anyway, I'll just tell you this, the thought that's in my mind right now, and like I said, I'm not dogmatic, I'll change tomorrow, just let me hear from God, or give me some facts that I could embrace, and I just want the truth. That it seems that it may not be true that Europe is Israel. It may be true that it's Esau. Now, the rabbis that I have a connection with, they say that Rome is Esau. And I've questioned the Lord about that. Brethren, I pray almost every day for the truth. That's how I get in these places. The rabbi says that Rome is Esau. And I found it in the Zohar. They mention Rome because it was the Romans that destroyed their temple. So the Jews have a real problem with Rome. And I didn't understand it like months ago or a couple of years ago. Rome is Esau. What do they mean Rome is Esau? Today I understand that when the Jews say Rome, they don't mean Rome, Italy. I thought they meant Rome, Italy. They don't mean Rome, Italy. You know. They mean the territory that was the Roman Empire at the time that Rome destroyed the temple. And that covers all of Europe. Do you understand what I just said? Yeah. So when they say that Rome is Esau, you know, they're talking about all of the territory that was the Roman Empire at the time that the Roman Empire destroyed their temple. They don't mean Rome, Italy. So I see a contradiction here. You know, maybe someday I'll know the truth, but I'm asking God. See? Well, I was sort of believing that that Europe was Israel, but now the rabbis are saying no. It's Esau. It's Esau.
Israel?
That Europe is Esau. Well, everything that was Rome was not Rome, Italy. It was even beyond Italy. It was the Europe. It was Japheth. Japheth, the European nations. So I am grateful that I now understand that when the Jews say that when they talk about Rome being Esau, they're not talking about Rome, Italy. Okay, I thank God for the expansion of my mind. See. So I don't have any conclusion. I'm just sharing with you. But I saw this very interesting video. Actually, I was thinking of emailing it to a couple of people, but I never did it. There were several black men on the internet that have very interesting things to say. One of them calls himself. He's always. You have to forgive me. Names. But it's something about the truth. He's always seeking out the truth. And this guy, he did a study on the black Americans. Okay. Now, I heard this same principle from Louis Farrakhan. Very interesting. Who named the black people I mean, we're all Americans, but okay, who took the black people in this country and designated them as black Americans? Where did that start? Who did that? And what does that mean, black American? Okay. So do others walk around saying I'm a black Irish, I'm an Irish American, or I'm an Italian American? If someone says to you, what are you? You're just an American. So where did this name Black American come from? And he started to investigate it. And I'll just tell you what his theory is. I made a very good point. Well, for the result of my recent recent journeys on the internet have been that I don't believe anything anymore. I believe that I'm absolutely in the matrix, and nothing is true except what I hear from God. Okay. So this was a very interesting video that he made. He claims that the black people of America did not come from Africa, except maybe one or two, but by and large did not come from Africa, that they came from the South Pacific. And he shows you pictures. I'm just staring at these pictures. He would show a black American, someone from Nigeria, and someone from Ethiopia. He always had two images of someone from, and that was both of their complaints. Well, I'll get back to that in a minute. What is this black? What is this African American? What is Africa? Is there an African culture? There's really not an African culture. There's a Nigerian culture. There's a Kenyan culture. There's an Ethiopian culture. Their whole point is that the black people in America they really need something. They've really been devastated. I believe that slavery devastated them, and they need a spiritual renewal. But he's saying they need something that they can say they are. And Africa is a nothing. So we said, well, let's see what the Ethiopians look like. And he showed a picture of a black American. Didn't look anything like the Ethiopian at all. Okay. Put a black American up against a Nigerian. Didn't look anything like a Nigerian. But I'm missing the whole point. Wait a minute, I'm sorry, brother, I'm doing it wrong. He says they came from the South Pacific. He shows a picture of a native of one of the islands in the South Pacific, a black American and an African. And the American doesn't look like the African. Looks like the guy from one of these islands in the South Pacific. And he was showing these triplets, photo after photo after photo after photo of the American not looking anything at all like the African, but looking very much like the people from the islands of the South Pacific. And he claims that it's a complete lie. All of these stories about the slave ships coming all the way from Africa and the slaves being thrown overboard and drowning. And he said that was not, he said they had to be interested in their money. So if they're going to be losing half of a shipload of people all the way over, how could they be making money on it? It was his position that it's just a lie. And now, why are they lying? I don't know why they'd be lying. Okay, but that most of the slaves came from the South Pacific. That was his point. And there was only one or two photos where the American black man looked like someone that might have come from Africa. You know, they all. And I was looking at Louis Farrakhan's audience yesterday, looking at their features, and I'm saying, you know, I always used to think because the black man in America is pretty much, well, there's all different shades, but most of the black people in America are lighter skinned than the people from Africa. That people from Africa are much blacker. So I always thought, well, it's, you know, a mixture, you know, the white blood is mixed in there, that's why the shades of color are different. But I was looking at their features in Farrakhan's audience, and I'm saying, no, they don't look African, they look like they're from the South Pacific. So I think the guy really has a point. But then I'm just sharing with you the journey that I've been on these last few days. You can draw your own conclusions, okay? And then, last but not least, you've got me for like another 20 minutes. So what does that mean? I don't know what it means. I just know that there's an invisible hand controlling everything, and I don't believe anything anymore unless God tells me that I'm in the matrix. I don't believe anything. And at the very least, I agree with the question, why black American? Why African American? Okay? They need a nation to join in that culture, if that's what you want to do. If you want to go back to Africa, why not a particular nation? You know, what kind of manipulation is this? And for what purpose is it? Can't be for a good purpose. I don't know what it's about, but I don't see how it can be for a good purpose. So it was just very interesting. His observation was very interesting. He has some very interesting stuff, this guy on. So then, last, but it wasn't even last, but not least, I wound up investigating Hitler's persecution of the Jews. And I found out something that absolutely fascinated me. Now, first and foremost, there's absolutely no excuse whatsoever for the camps or what Hitler did. Okay, but this is what I found out. And I had heard previously that Hitler was very much against the communists in Germany when he came to power, and that the political atmosphere in Germany at the time was Nazism against communism. There were two political ideologies in Germany at the time that were opposed to each other. Only one of them could have survived. And that when the Nazis were elected, when the Nazi Party was elected, they were out arresting communists. They were all against the communists. Okay? Now, again, you cannot, you cannot assign one thing to a whole race of people, but you can draw a generality. And a lot of Jewish people are very pro-communist. I mean, that is no secret. Okay? The kibbutzim in Israel are based on Karl Marx's principles. They're communist communes. That's what they are. And all of the leaders of the communist overtake in Russia were Jewish. I mean, it's just the truth. There are a lot of Jewish people during in the 60s that were communists. It's just the truth. You know? So it looks, well, I'll come back to that. What I found on the internet, I'll tell you this, that I've known for a while that the political ideology was communist versus Nazism, but it never occurred to me to think that large numbers of the communists in Germany were Jewish. That never occurred to me. I just knew that it was Nazism against communism, and I knew that that Hitler persecuted the Jews, but I never stopped to think about why that even started. I know that there's been anti-Semitism scattered across Europe for centuries, and I always thought that he started with the Jews because they were his scapegoats. That's what I was taught. And I found out that that's not the whole story. I found out on the internet from too many, I don't just take one article, it's all over the internet with pictures of newspaper headlines that before there was ever any such thing as a death camp or anything like that at all, there was a political action group. I have heard of the Jewish National Congress. I have heard of the Jewish National Congress, but in my whole lifetime, I never experienced Judaism as being a political movement. I personally never experienced it, even though I know that there's something called the Jewish National Congress. I hope I have the name right. It's something like that. They still exist. Apparently, back in 1933, the Jewish National Congress held a meeting of Jews from all over the world, successful, powerful Jewish people in America, and they decided to call a boycott of German goods in 1933, before the war started, before there was a death camp. International Judaism was calling for a boycott of German goods. They declared war on Hitler. The Jewish National Congress, I may have the name wrong, declared, and I saw the headline in the newspaper, Jews declare war on Hitler, or Germany, or something like that. They declared economic war on Hitler. And at that time, Germany was still reeling from their defeat in World War I. Their economy was very bad, and a boycott, an international boycott, I don't know whether it was national or international, they were calling for an international boycott of German goods, would have caused starvation in Germany because they had to, I read that, I'm sorry, I don't have all the details for you, but it would have caused starvation, a lack of food from coming into Germany. And so I'm reading this article, I'm seeing the banner headlines of the newspapers, you know. Now I remember my father telling me that he would never buy a German product, but I always thought that was because of what happened during World War II. It never occurred to me that my father was still going along the party line of this Jewish National Congress that called a boycott in 1933 before the war ever started. A boycott of German goods. So according to what I could find out was that Hitler's response to the Jewish boycott against German goods was, I'm going to boycott Jewish businesses in Germany. But all I ever heard about was the boycott of the Nazi, boycott of German businesses, of Jewish businesses in Germany. I never heard that the Jews declared an economic war on Hitler. And then I read further, and it quoted a couple of these, powerful lawyers in America standing up, and one guy stood up and was accusing Hitler of atrocities, chopping hands off and things like that. And I said, well, this was before the death camps. What is this all about? What, and I want to know why the Jews would declare war on Hitler before any of the death camps or before the Jews were deported or anything like that at all. And I found that article about this lawyer, this big shot Jewish lawyer, accusing Hitler of doing all of these atrocities, and Hitler's response being, and this was the newly elected Hitler, he wasn't Mein Fuhrer yet. Hitler saying, well, that was wrong and we won't do it anymore, just call this off. Call off this international boycott. Germany was weak, economically weak at the time, and the Jews wouldn't call it off. I mean, this could have been written by some anti-Semitic person, but I don't see how, Is this a fact or is it not a fact? That the Jews were boycotting German goods? So then I had to ask the question, why were the Jews doing that? And what are they talking about? Chopping hands off and doing all these atrocities if there were no death camps yet. I couldn't find the answer on the internet, but the answer that came to my mind was that it was the communists that a lot of the communists would, the preponderance of communists in Germany in 1933 were Jewish. And the Nazi government was arresting the communists. That I've known for a long time now. And so they were abusing them, torturing them and chopping hands off, because they were communists. And this whole, it became somehow, I'm sure that I just have the outskirts of the information, but did anybody ever hear any of this before? Mm-hmm. So I may not have all the information, but you need to pray about it. We need the truth, right? Now, there's absolutely no justification for what Hitler did, for his solution to the Jewish problem. I always wondered about that. He said the solution to the Jewish problem. Why were the Jews a problem for him? I could never understand why the Jews were a problem for him. Mm-hmm. Well, they were threatening the life of Germany. Yeah. Yeah. Now, so I said to the Lord, why would these prominent Jewish people accuse Hitler of that? And that's the answer that came to me, that the communist movement was largely Jewish, and they were arresting communists and torturing them. So Hitler said, we're going to stop that. We'll stop it. It was a mistake. I found an article, a newspaper article from 1933 where Hitler was saying that. Just stop the boycott. Stop the boycott of Germany, and we won't boycott the Jewish businesses. And the Jews wouldn't back down. So that, I now know what the Jewish problem was for Hitler. They declared war on him. After he declared war on the communists, and then the Jews in America declared war on Hitler. Listen, brother, there's no excuse for what Hitler did, but we need to know the truth. Nothing is black and white, you see. Now it even gets worse. And I have heard this also. It's amazing the way the Lord brings me information in little bits at a time. Sometimes the truth is too painful to embrace all at once. I think as we accept these things as truth, or at least pray about it and get your witnesses from God, it expands our mind, and it makes it easier for us to believe painful things, greater amounts of painful things. Once our mind is functioning on this level that we're starting to, and when I say believe, I'm not even talking about any conclusions. I'm talking about facts. I'm talking about newspaper articles saying American Jews declare war on economic war on Germany, things like that. How come nobody tells you about that? See? Again, in no way justifying Hitler's solution to the problem. Okay. So now, simultaneously with all this, and I've heard this also, been hearing this for a couple of years too. There was this, there was this Zionist movement, which was started by a man called Herzl, I believe, was a movement that said, it was an ideology that said Jews, because there always has been anti-Semitism in Europe, okay? And, well, let me tell you this first. Another thing that came to me also, I've heard the rabbi that I have a relationship with, he's from Russian descent. And I think it was his grandmother that went to jail because it was illegal to teach Judaism in Russia. So his grandmother wound up in a concentration camp because she was teaching. I don't know if she wound up in a concentration camp, but it was illegal. I think she was arrested. And I thought, why is it illegal to teach Judaism? Why would they make it illegal to, I heard they persecuted the Jews. I know about the pogroms. I understand that the Jews were stateless people. But why would you make their religion illegal? Why would you do that? And true or not, what came to me, and I believe this is God, is that the Russians knew about this agenda, which goes back, I don't know how far it goes back, maybe the 1800s or further back than that. I think maybe the 1800s. This agenda for world conquest. And those of us that have been into this kind of knowledge, I'll call it esoteric political knowledge, I'm sure you all heard the story of the founding of the Freemasons. That there was this plot by the name of Weishaupt, or I may have his name wrong, Weishaupt, the one who started the central banks, him and his sons. They're the founder of the Freemasons. The Freemasons grew out of that, and the world banks all grew out of that. And they had this plan for world conquest, which was a maniacal, satanic plan upon the program upon which the New World Order is based. And they were sending a messenger. The father had his sons placed opening up banks all over Europe, and a messenger that was delivering a communique from the father to the son about this plan I think he got trapped or died or something. In those days, a man went on horseback with a parcel, and the plan was discovered because the man died in a storm or something. And so they made that organization illegal, but it was revealed, I think in the 1800s. I may have the wrong year. So this knowledge I think that it's just the average person that's so ignorant. I think the governments have known about this ever since that day, that there's a plan to take over the whole world by destroying national borders. And they came from this Khazarian Jew. So, to what degree is it a Jewish plan? It's not the Jew in the street. It's not the Jew in the street. I mean, do you blame the Italian in the street for Mussolini? And do you blame every German person for what Hitler did? Although there were people screaming and yelling, cheering him in the streets, but you just can't do that. You can't blame every Jew. But apparently it came out of this Khazarian Jew, and apparently this plan to conquer the world, it's still alive in the higher echelons. When I say higher echelons, the inner circle of Jewry. That's why they're rebuilding their temple, to get the power to rule the world. I've been telling you that for a couple of years now. So that's why, and this is what I'm hearing in my own spirit. That's why studying Judaism was illegal in Russia. It wasn't that it was anti-Semitism. It was that they were trying to stop this ideology from coming forth. What ideology? Really? That Jews are a superior race. I'm not ready to publish any of this message, is all I'm publishing. But that's what they teach, that Jews are a superior race. I just told you about Farrakhan, and I'm telling you about the Jewish doctrine. The Jews say black people are an inferior race. The Talmud says black people are an inferior race. Farrakhan says white people are born of dogs, okay? But they think that they're the chosen people and that they're here to rule the world. And as soon as they build their temple and get their power back, a lot of Christians say the Antichrist, the Jewish Antichrist, is going to appear, and they're going to be well, we're going to find out, But that's what they believe. It's the Talmud is on the internet. If you really want to find it, you can find it. But it's not the Jew in the street. It's not the average Jew. Is it, when it comes to the black hat community, I don't think the women know. I don't think they tell the women, although maybe they do. Is it every black hat that you see? Or is it just the inner circle, the rabbis? I don't know. But that plan to conquer the world came out of this Khazarian man. He wasn't even a practicing Jew, he was a secular Jew. But it's been embraced by the inner echelons of the Jewish community, and is based upon racism. They think they're a superior race. They don't say or do anything today because they're in another country. As soon as they get their own power, they think they're going to conquer the world and kill everybody that doesn't believe in one God. The Muslims are okay because they believe in one God. They're planning on giving all the Christians one chance to repent and then killing them. It's all over the internet. You can find it yourself. So that may not be the reason why they made Judaism illegal in Russia, but it certainly is a good guess. Is it not a good guess? It's a good guess. Mm-hmm. And did it not happen? Did it not happen that a group of Jewish ideologues came in with communism and overthrew the Russian government? Their fears came upon them. But what's confusing about it, if you let it confuse you, is that the communists are godless. They're secular Jews godless, as opposed to the black hat Jews who think they're going to build their temple and serve God and conquer the world. So I don't know how to reconcile those two factions. Okay, I leave that with you. I don't know how to reconcile those two factions. But now the other aspect that I want to tell you about is Zionism. So I'm told, from what I understand, that the Rothschilds, who are secular Jews, I don't even know what they are. They're probably lizards, you know. The Rothschilds are amongst those 16 of the oligarchy that are bringing forth the New World Order. The Rockefellers are there, and several Rothschilds are there. And so they, as I understand it, they purchased all that land in the Middle East. And they wanted it to be a Jewish homeland. There's this, what's the big deal of the Jewish homeland? Why would the Rothschilds be pushing a Jewish homeland? Because they want the temple rebuilt, because they're Freemasons, they want the temple rebuilt, and they want the power, the spiritual power. They think the spiritual power is in rebuilding the temple and doing the sacrifices. So I remember when Israel became a state. I was in Hebrew school. I was 10 years old. Everybody was dancing and singing the Jewish national anthem. And before that, anybody was saying all the Jews should move to Israel. Now, all you Jews, you should move to Israel. All you American Jews, you should pack up and move to Israel. Now that we have a national state or a nation. Well, there were Jews that packed up and moved to Israel, but certainly not the majority of Jews. Most Jews were very happy here in America. They just stayed here. Well, before that, going back to 1933, before Israel became a state, this Zionist movement, it was an ideology. It was a movement. It was what you think about. There should be. You're not sleeping on me, are you? There should be an Israeli state. There should be an Israelite state. There should be an Israel state. It was a movement. It was an idea. And it was being pushed by the Rothschilds, these maniacal bankers that are destroying the whole world by possessing all the currency. Well, and I had heard this before my recent journey these last few days over the internet, that they made a deal with Hitler. That the whole purpose of the persecution against the Jews in Germany was to drive them to Israel, because the German Jews didn't want to move to Israel any more than the American Jews did. The German Jews in Israel were by and large secular Jews, just like they are today. Secular Jews, prosperous, doctors, lawyers, wealthy people. They didn't want to move to Israel. So the Rothschilds couldn't get anybody interested in this move. Why would you be interested in moving to Israel when you're very comfortable? And they didn't even consider them. They considered themselves Germans first. Like, I'm an American. You know, I'm a Christian, but I'm an American. They consider themselves Germans. They didn't want to go to Israel. So the suggestion is that a deal was made between Germany and with Hitler and the Rothschilds to persecute the Jews, to drive them to Israel. Well, Sheila, what kind of proof do you have? According to what I read, and besides, I'm just sharing with you. I don't have to prove anything to you. I'm just giving you information. According to what I read, the Jews were threatened to leave before they were deported, and there was a tax. And please forgive me if I don't have this exactly right. There was an exit tax to any country you would go to except Israel. Israel was the only place that you could go to. The cheapest and the most efficient way to get out was to go to Israel. And I'm told that really happened. See? So it was the Rothschilds who were behind this move to Israel. And of course, brethren, it was a whole Freemason move. They have a network everywhere. So for all of us that were offended and disappointed, at the I think it was two ships that came loaded with Jewish people that President Roosevelt would not let into the country. Why would he not let them into the country? I was hearing that in my heart before I read it in the article, that the information went out to all of the leaders of the nations. They shouldn't let any fleeing Jews into the country. They were trying to force them to Israel. Now, for those two ships went back to Germany and were killed, I don't know why they didn't go to Israel. I don't know about that. But that was why Roosevelt wouldn't let them in. He was under instructions from Freemason hierarchy to not let them in. We're pushing them to Israel. So we see the Jewish Congressional Committee, or whatever the right name is, calling for a boycott against Germany, and the Zionist movement making a deal with Hitler. They were like working against each other. Two Jewish factions working against each other. But the hatred for the Jews, it started, and this I didn't read it, but it's my conclusion, that it really started because the communists were mostly Jewish, and that was where it started. That was what Hitler's problem was with all of the Jews, because maybe a lot of them were communists. So I've just really been educated these last few days, and who knows what the Lord's going to be teaching us next. So, yes.
My mom had told me a long time ago that, and I didn't really believe it, I just, heard it, and she said the Jews were making a lot of money.
Yeah.
A tremendous amount of money, and that's why the Germans were against them. And that's all that she had
Well,
said.
there's always jealousy. I'm sure that
Yeah.
that was true.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that was true. But how do you get from hating them and being against them to, And now I read, and I honestly don't know what to believe, but I heard I know that there were concentration camps because I've seen the people with the tattoos on their arms, and I've heard the testimony, so I know that there were concentration camps. But it's just really challenging to hear somebody say there were no ovens, that there were no. I saw this man interviewed that went there. He went to Germany and he took samples of all of the death camps. We know there were camps, and he says that based on the minerals and the rocks or whatever, that there's no way that cyanide gas could have been set up in these places. Who knows who he is? And then that's what he said, that cyanide gas requires this. We're talking about scientific principles, right? You needed this and you needed that, and if they didn't have it that way, the people administering it would have been killed. And there's no evidence at all that the structure that would have been needed, to be gassing all these people could have been in these places. And I'm not ready to give up that belief. I mean, God's going to really have to tell me that wasn't true for me to believe that. But I'm not afraid to listen to what somebody else has to say. And then he went on to say that there are no first-hand witnesses of the gassings. Well, I guess they all died, But what about the Germans that were involved in it? I'm not ready to believe that there were no gassings. The Lord would have to really tell me that. We know that there were concentration camps and that the conditions were horrendous. And I've seen pictures of skin and bones people that were there when Eisenhower freed them, and all of that. But this is what I'm left with, and this is a big challenge. You see, that's why maybe Mary's afraid to let go. Brother, it's frightening to let go. Are you going to let God catch you, or you're not? Everything I've ever believed in is falling apart. I'm in the matrix. I don't believe anything here. I don't believe anything that I learned in school. I don't believe anything that the newspapers tell me. I have to be careful of what I believe on the internet. Everything's a lie. And there's this invisible hand, which seems to be Freemasonry, manipulating and controlling our whole world. I've known for a long time that the Rockefellers paid off the people that write the school books not to tell the truth about World War II, that it was really a spiritual war. So if the books are wrong and the history books are wrong, forget about the History Channel, all these people that are learning from the History Channel. I just have to hear from God, and I'm not afraid to listen to both sides, although I have to tell you that it's stressful to me, to what I heard about there being no ovens, because I don't want to not believe that if that's true. So we'll see. I'm going to believe it until the Lord, unless the Lord really shows me otherwise. I'm going to continue to believe it. So this is, brethren, this was not just I was not just chatting with you today. I'm going to tell you again. I think I only said it to you once to the best of my memory. Ascension is with our mind. We're all looking for spiritual ascension. You need to understand what it is. Spiritual ascension is expansion of your mind. Our body's not going anywhere. It's the expansion of your mind. Spiritual ascension is an ascension into truth. And truth is painful and frightening. Truth is painful and frightening. And the only people that are going to survive this matrix are the people that have another mind, a mind that's not subject to the matrix. The only people that will survive this ascension and go on into this ascension are the people that have the mind of God. It's impossible. Satan cannot be divided and survive. You cannot, I don't care how heroic your carnal mind is. However heroic your carnal mind is, there is no way that you are going to ascend into the kingdom of God with your carnal mind. It's incapable of getting in there. And the thought came to me the other day that when the scripture where Jesus found somebody at the wedding, someone at the wedding, and they weren't wearing a wedding garment, and he cast them out. It's your mind. The wedding garment is your mind. And we saw the person cast out today that's sitting with the wedding party that was not wearing a wedding garment. And we saw her cast out today. It's your mind. It's your mind. So whatever you could get out of this, I'm just encouraging you all with closing that you rebuke all fear, okay? Because it's frightening to find out that you can't believe anything. You can't believe, and you can't believe the newspapers, you can't believe what you were taught in school, but you can believe Jesus, see? And the truth is in you. If you have Christ Jesus and you have the mind of Christ, the truth is in you. The ability to receive the truth without condemnation. Okay, you can't be condemning anybody. Just truth. Brethren, who knows what God is going to tell us when we get to the point. What am I even saying? When we've received so much truth from God already, who knows what's waiting for us? But the truth of this world has to expand simultaneously with the spiritual truth. We don't know what's waiting for us. And I was in the scripture the other day, actually I was listening to it in my car. Little clips just jumped out and grasped onto my mind. And the orator was reading from Isaiah, a passage that I've heard over and over and over and over again, but it never meant anything to me. And this time I heard, and the hand of the weaned child will cover the nest of the snake, or the asp, or whatever the right word is. The hand of the weaned child. What weaned child? We're all suckling. We're still sucking. We're still at the breast of the Lord Jesus Christ. We're still all suckling. Who's the weaned child? It has to be Jesus. He's the only one that's weaned that I know of. And his hand, which is the hand signifies the mind, will cover the serpent, which is your carnal mind. Mm-hmm. And our carnal mind refused to go down under the hand of God. So she didn't have a wedding garment on. So the bad side, the sad side of that is that she was cast out. The positive side of it is, I guess it's time for the wedding. Any questions? Any questions or anything to say? Anybody have anything to say?
Just thank you. Thank you for all this information. It's really
Isn't it incredible? Powerful information.
powerful.
Yeah, very powerful information.
And it's really getting in here.
And you know what's interesting, June, is that all this information is out there. And as I was doing all this research, they were naming books. There are people that have written books on all of these subjects. So if you go digging, I mean, I don't have time to be reading all of these books, so I just take the synopses of it. But it's not a secret. for someone who's curious enough to go digging it out, the information is still out there. They haven't burnt the books yet. You know? So I mean, there are whole books with details written on it. But you're welcome. And this is my warning to you, and it's the warning. My father used to warn me like this, but maybe not all the way. But this is the warning of God to me, brethren. Don't get caught up in any emotional cause, including Donald Trump. See? Don't get caught up in any emotional cause. Stay in your rational Christ mind, and remember that whatever the moment is, yay Trump, you know, I went to a Trump rally, I enjoyed it, but don't ever lose sight that the true purpose is way beyond that. Don't ever get caught up emotionally to the point that you could be manipulated, but stay in the mind of God, and remember that there's always something, there's always a higher purpose than some emotional high that you're having. And I really enjoyed that emotional high in the Trump rally. But there's always a higher purpose, and there's somebody behind it. There's the guiding hands of the evil ones, and there's the guiding hand of the Lord. Don't ever get caught up in an emotional thing, an emotional event, or if a revival should come back with a big Holy Spirit move, don't get caught up in it. You can enjoy it, you can be blessed by it, but don't forget that there's a much higher purpose of God that we're called to. Okay? That we're not of we're from beyond the matrix. We're from outside of the matrix. I'm outside of the matrix. Be outside of the matrix with me. Okay? And your biggest enemy are your emotions. It's your emotions. Satan will get you in your emotions, but he really cannot touch the mind of God. He can just use your emotions to overshadow the mind of God. Stay in the truth. Okay? Does anybody have anything to say?
Rita had a question. Are the Khazar Jews living in Israel, or where do they live?
Well, that's a good question. Israel is a mixture. It's the Khazar Jews that seem to control the government, like Netanyahu is a Khazar Jew. But there are also Jews who are descendants of Abraham that were living in that area before Israel became a nation. So, and those Jews, which are darker skinned Jews, they're Arabic Jews. Iraqi Jews. Abraham was what is it? Iraq today. He was. They're the minority, and it's the Ashkenazi Jews that have the power in the nation. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, myself, I mean, it was a very interesting meeting, of course, and then the ending was just a lot of information, very interesting, interesting information. I thank the Lord for all the truth that's coming.
Mm.
So, Rita says thank you. I don't know if Sandra wants to say something.
Yes, Sandra, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't know if everybody had gone. Yeah, there was a lot of very interesting information. I learned a lot today, actually, and it's interesting because when you're talking about Farrakhan, I just always had such a aversion toward him because of. I don't even know. I didn't really, in my mind, have it picked out what my aversion toward him was. I just thought he stood for some things that weren't very good. But you brought out some of the ideals that he's teaching and how you can take somebody that's like him, and to be honest, I still don't know what the basis of his message is, beyond what you said, that he had some really positive things to say. But just the fact that you have to be willing to listen to somebody who you may not agree with and really know why you disagree with them and what you might agree with them, and have it all be based on righteousness.
Yeah.
And that is like a very high place to be, I think, because everybody's running around right now in this country throwing out all this spew against, like, people like Donald Trump, and maybe even Savage and Alex Jones, and they just hear a few things here and there, and they have no basis for which to base their opinion on.
Yeah.
And so what you did today for me in my heart, it made me reevaluate my opinions, and generally.
Mm-hmm. Of Louis Farrakhan?
Oh, just general. Well, for him, yes, for him, but I don't really have any opinion of him personally because I don't know really anything else about him. Like I said, my previous understanding of him was that he was no good. You know, he was for like black supremacy and the I don't know. I think I associated with Malcolm X. It's been so long since I've heard his name, but when I did hear his name, it was very negative. It was under negative premise. So when you're talking about him having very positive, from what I understand, a very positive influence in his message, it makes me sort of rethink what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I was very disappointed to
For me,
see. I was very disappointed to see his message go off the cliff because it was an excellent message. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sandra.
No, I was just going to wrap it up and just say that was what really I was really enlightened today from that point of view. So, and the Jewish, that whole message that you gave, that was amazing to me. Again, not to justify what Hitler did, but it does put another spin of truth in there that I just still sitting here with my jaw open and going, I just can't believe that this stuff isn't out there. I can't believe that we're not being taught this. They'll teach one point of view, and the question then would be, why wasn't that out there? Why was that being covered up?
Yeah.
Why was that truth about the Jews, taking away or not sort of boycotting German products? Why wasn't that more obvious to people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because whoever's in control of all those things took the position. The death camps were horrendous, and so there's no point in showing you the other side, but that doesn't develop thinking people. You see, we need to be thinking people.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's true because, I thought, why the Jews, why those people, and then you just say,
Well, it's
there's
just
no answer. Yeah, there's no answer.
Scapegoated them.
Yeah.
They were a minority, and scapegoated them. That's what we were taught.
Yeah, so you just kind of put it away.
Out of the blue, he just picked them. He went eeny, meeny, miny, moe, and he picked them. So, if anything comes out of this, we need to know, and the Lord's been telling me this for years, nothing comes out of nothing. There's always a reason. We may not be able to see what's behind it right now, but as long as we know that there's always a hand behind it, then we can ask the Lord, because He doesn't tell us unless we ask. You need to ask Him, Lord, what's behind that?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. Amen.
Okay, let's just say a prayer for Mary before we close. Yes.
Lord.
Father, in the name of Jesus, we just pray, Father, that this judgment should be a rod across her back and that her pride should break. I know that the first time I put her out of the ministry, she really was so laissez-faire about it. It was disgraceful. But now that the time is so close, I hope that it breaks her spirit, the ungodly spirit on her, and that she should find repentance and that you should restore her fully. That's my hope, Lord. In Jesus' name. Amen.